For a few years now, I've been making how-to videos on a multitude of different machines ranging from automotive, ATVs, snowmobiles, lawnmowers, and even snowblowers. So why am I making this video now? That's because I haven't had very much carnage in some of my videos, well, except maybe for my Subaru. Yeah, we definitely have some rod end play. Until now, I think I might have found really cool carnage that you guys might be interested in. Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. I'm Rick, the Honest Mechanic, and in front of me, I have a friction plate from a snowblower, and I'm gonna get into what this part does, but let me show you exactly what carnage I'm talking about, and that is the fact that there's a hole in here and it's not supposed to have one. The plate is actually supposed to look like this and not like this. So what does this friction plate do? Well, this friction plate actually drives the wheels on your snowblower. They're all various different sizes, various different styles, but they're all common in the sense that they move the wheels or the tracks depending on your snowblower. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to touch on what caused this and how to prevent it. Number one, you might be wondering, well, this thing looks like it's made of aluminum, and why would they not make this out of steel? Actually, that's a very good question. And the answer to that I've been able to come up with is the reason it's made out of aluminum alloy is because aluminum actually tends to not absorb heat. So it likes to just dissipate heat really quickly. It's been my experience that steel or some type of heavier metal tends to absorb heat, and you don't want that. The other thing is it's also running a rubber wheel, and the wheel, I don't have one with me, but the wheel runs perpendicular to this. And what this does is it actually just turns rotational forces from this way to a 90-degree rotational force this way. So you might be wondering, well, how does this get so bad? Well, that's because somebody wasn't paying attention. Clearly, there was either some wear on that friction wheel and it was completely gone to the point where the actual metal on the disc started contacting this, and you would have heard that. You would have heard probably a loud squealing, and it's probably been adjusted and readjusted to make up for the fact that the unit probably stopped moving altogether. So, you know, that's how I think it happened, but there's a couple other things too. Being that this is a friction plate running on a rubber wheel, main reason that I see these fail or actually start slipping is because these are either oiled or they're wet. For some reason, either somebody's gone in there and decided to give everything a nice coating of either penetrating oil or just anti-corrosion fluid, and if it gets onto the plate, you will never have perfect drive anymore. The other reason is because after you've used your snowblower for a length of time and you store it in a cold environment, you'll get condensation on this plate. So sometimes you may have to put it in gear, raise the wheels until you get rid of that moisture. So let's go to a snowblower I have here in the shop, and I'm going to explain to you all the ins and outs of how this works. Here we have the inner workings of the underneath of your snowblower. This one happens to be a Husqvarna, and there's actually quite a lot going on here, but let me explain. So like I was saying, this is your friction plate. Of course, they're all slightly different. This is engine driven. So if I pull on the recoil here, you'll notice that as I pull the recoil, it turns clockwise, right? So we know that being engine driven will be turning at the same time or at the same rate as the engine, which is if the engine's running, this plate is always turning. Now, contacting this plate, which is what makes the wheels turn, is this wheel right here. This is called the friction wheel. Now, friction plate, friction wheel. We already established that this is made of aluminum. This one here, however, is made of just a rubber disc. These are usually replaceable. You can change them if they start to wear down. And based on the orientation of this wheel, because as you can tell, I can move it slide along this shaft here, will determine what gear you're in. So if you're on one side of this friction disc, you're going to be in reverse. If you're on the other side, you'll be in drive. That depends on the orientation of this, of course. Now, if you spin this wheel, if I go nice and slow, I don't want to take it off the stand here, you'll notice that these gears on both sides will also turn. Right? So that's your gear reduction. And then these little guys up here, so we got one here, you got planetary gears inside here, and those are for your triggers to disengage one wheel whenever you don't want it, so you can steer easily. These are optional. Of course, not every snowblower has them, but basically this is what the inner workings of a good working snowblower looks like, not like what we had. Also, I should note before we get back to it, this friction disc will actually pivot forward this way, contacting this wheel. So that is what makes everything turn, at least as for the drive, and having this tension set properly is critical. So now that we know how it looks like inside, I'm going to go back to how we can adjust this and why it's important to make sure that you don't add too much pressure on the friction disc versus the friction wheel. They both have to work together. If you put too much pressure on that wheel, because everybody thinks, well, more pressure is better because I'm going to get better drive. Actually, that's not right. What you'll do is you're just going to disintegrate that rubber wheel, and this is what you end up with more prematurely than you have to. So we're going to go over in a second. We're going to talk about which levers and how you adjust the tension on at least the two snowblowers I have here in the shop, but everything is very different from model to model, so this is not exactly the video for that. You'll have to consult your manual if you want to do that perfectly. The reason you want to make sure that it's adjusted properly, just like the belt tension on your auger, for example, is because to gain access to this and replace this particular component is time consuming. You have to disassemble the entire unit to get to it, at least the cup kit as I'm showing here. It takes a long time, and that can be costly if you're not doing it yourself. So that's why I'm making this video, just as a kind of a public address notice, so that you guys know what you can have as an issue if you're not careful. Alright, so talking about adjustment, I have two snowblowers here, two various ages and two completely different brands. This happens to be a Husqvarna, and the tension adjustment on this particular one, if we follow the cable here, is actually right here, and what you're going to do is either lengthen or shorten this turnbuckle, and that'll adjust the cable on that particular friction disc. And if we go down over here to the older school Craftsman's, what we have is just a very simple cable setup with a spring, and inside here we have a threaded rod. So what you'll have inside the spring is a nut, and you would just again either tighten or loosen the nut, and that would actually give you more tension if you ever needed that, or lesser tension. The third most common thing that I see that relates to this kind of damage is using the improper gear for the snow conditions. So what I mean by that is if your wheels are constantly spinning and you're trying to move the snow, it's probably a good idea to gear it down so that you're moving just fast enough so that the auger can clear itself out and you're not overworking the components. So there you have it, guys. Now you know how to avoid this kind of carnage. So during your next snowfall, try and use some of the tips that I talked about, and hopefully you really don't have this stuff, because like I said, this is an expensive repair, at least time-wise. So that'll be the end of this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all in the next video. Bye.